A new deal on Capitol Hill could help millions of Americans keep health care coverage, and the questions raised by consumer advocates in California.
I was burned from ear to ear, across my face, the worst of it being the right side of my face and the right side of my back from where the windows blew.
Surviving wildfires in San Diego, the firefighter who recovered from her burns, how the firefight changed her life. And happening tonight, the state of the district. San Diego school leaders weigh in on key issues affecting students. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Key senators have reached a deal that could ward off an increase in health care premiums under Obamacare. The bipartisan compromise will restore federal payments to health insurers that President Trump halted last week. Insurers warned without payments, premiums would go up. Trump says he supports today's compromise, which involves a 2-year extension of federal payments.
This is a short-term deal. Because we think ultimately block grants going to the states is going to be the answer. That's a very good solution. We think it's going to not only save money, but give people much better health care with a very, very much smaller premium spike. And you look at what's gone on with that. Also much lower deductible so they can use it.
While the agreement is a breakthrough, support from fellow Republicans and Democrats still needs to be secured. And KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says consumer advocates are looking for more details.
The tentative deal would reinstate the ACA's cost-sharing reductions that President Trump eliminated last week through an executive order. In return, the proposal would give states some flexibility to allow the sale of some less robust health insurance plans. Beth Capell is a policy analyst with the nonprofit Health Access California. She wants to see the fine print.
We know that in the fight over the ACA repeal, flexibility was a code word for undoing the key protections that the Affordable Care Act had.
Senators involved in the negotiations say some obstacles still remain. And even if they produce a piece of legislation, it will take 60 votes in the Senate to pass it. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
New details tonight about the hepatitis A crisis in San Diego. Today, health officials confirmed another death, bringing the number to 19 this year. This map from county health officials shows more than 63% of cases have been located within San Diego city limits. 507 people have been infected in the county. Roughly 2/3 of the victims have been homeless or users of illicit drugs. The hepatitis A outbreak may be impacting San Diego tourism. Local tour companies say potential visitors have a lot of questions. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman found out how one local company is trying to explain the crisis.
They do talk about it. They have read about it. What we're explaining to them is that we've had this situation with the homeless in San Diego for a while, and it just inevitably it reached a tipping point.
Kenneth Lippman is the CEO at another side of San Diego Tours.
It almost looks to the outside observer like nothing is being done.
For the last 10 years, Lippman has worked downtown and thinks the health crisis could have been prevented.
It's sad that it had to take a hepatitis breakout in order for people to be aware of the homeless situation. We hope that there would be something before it got to such an extreme situation, but now it reached that level that everyone knows about it.
The San Diego Tourism Authority estimates 35 million people visit San Diego every year, making it a top travel destination.
We get a wide variety of folks, but most of the people that come here, they always mention something about, I'm surprised by how many homeless people there are here.
Lippman says he isn't sure what a long-term solution could be, but says it should be a community effort.
We want to host guests from all over the world. We don't want them to get sick when they come here. We don't want anybody to get sick. We just want to show off our beautiful city.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Today, San Diego City Council members gave approval to a Christian-themed resort proposed for Mission Valley. The Morris Cirillo Legacy International Center went through a major redesign this year. It includes a hotel, theater, and missionary training center. The council's 5 Democrats rejected the project last month, citing traffic concerns, but they agreed to give the project a second look this week. Councilwoman Barbara Bree originally opposed the project.
And I did have concerns about traffic congestion, parking, and circulation. And I believe these concerns have been addressed. We're not allowed to address whether we like what goes on this site or we don't like what goes on this site. That's not what's at hand today.
The televangelist behind the project has embraced so-called gay conversion therapy. LGBT groups opposed the project but insisted their opposition was not on religious grounds. Tonight, we're learning what's next for San Diego Unified Schools. District leaders are delivering this year's State of the District address. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks is at Sherman Elementary with more.
We're here at Sherman Academy in Sherman Heights, where tonight's State of the District address is going to be. I'm here with Board President Richard Barrera. Hi.
Hi, Megan. Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the highs and lows that we're going to hear about tonight?
Yeah, well, I think Superintendent Martin is going to really focus on what's been incredible progress in our district over the last several years. You know, our graduation rates are at an all-time high. Our test scores are at the top of the state among, large urban districts in California. We had rapid expansion of schools like Sherman, which are dual language immersion schools. So really, so many great things are going on in the district. But what I'm, Megan, frankly, going to talk about is what's our role as a community to support public education. And I think we need to challenge ourselves because we currently in California rank near rock bottom in per pupil funding. And then we see the stress that our kids and our families are under, whether it's a lack of affordable housing or threats around deportation. So I think it's kind of we have highs and lows is a good way of putting it, because the highs are the work that our educators and our parents and our students are doing together every day in our schools and are producing, the highest educational outcomes that we've ever seen, at the same time that we're putting more stress on both our families and our schools. And so I think we need to figure out as a community, are we going to come together and really fight for public education, or are we going to leave our educators on their own? And so that's, I think we should challenge ourselves as a community and also then celebrate the great work that's been done.
I think the district has been pretty active in trying to reassure parents, especially those in the immigrant community.
Yeah.
One thing that we're hearing from parents is a bit of concern about transparency, and there seems to be a movement to kind of change the way that the board is elected. We heard the city of San Diego weigh whether or not to put something on the ballot. There may be still room for that to occur next year. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that that's coming from parents. I believe that it's a partisan motivated. It's the 4 Republican members of the city council that have put proposals together to change the way that school board elections operate. So I think the question of how the school board elections are held is a conversation that the entire community should participate in. And so Trustee Sharon Whitehurst-Payne and I have been charged by the rest of the board to develop ideas for a community process, and we'll bring that back to the board, for full consideration. But we think everybody in the community should have a chance to weigh in. Do we want more school board districts than we currently have? How do we make sure that we're looking out for the interests of all kids, including the kids in our highest poverty communities, and that we don't turn into a polarized school district that, some board members represent kids north of 8 and other, board members represent kids south of 8. So I think we need to move beyond partisan politics, which I think is what's driving this right now, and really have a broader community conversation about this.
I will say that there were some Democrats on the city council who did agree that term limits might be a good way to move. My other question for you, last year the big kind of news story was unfortunately budget cuts at the district. Do we have any insight as to what next year is going to look like?
Well, last year was a painful year, but what we were able to do last year was pretty much eliminate the structural deficit that the district has faced for 20 years, where revenues expenses have exceeded revenues every year. So, we've got a little bit of work, left to do this year. But the big question, for, again, all of us as a community is, why is it that we're not providing the schools what they need, given that I think everybody would agree that the smartest thing that we can do as a community is to invest in our public schools. So rather than continue this conversation year after year about what we're cutting, why don't we start to have a conversation about what we're willing to invest in? And I think that's where we need to be going, not only in San Diego, but throughout California.
Thank you, Board President Richard Barrera. This is Megan Burks reporting from Sherman Heights Elementary School near downtown San Diego. We'll have more on tonight's State of the District address on radio in the morning and on kpbs.org.
California community colleges are offering special services this week to help immigrant students who are affected by the changes to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Dubbed DACA Week, campuses are offering everything from legal clinics to workshops on managing stress. City College estimates it has several hundred immigrant students experiencing new uncertainty now that the program is set to end.
Trying to make decisions about whether they should stay in school, should they leave and work for the next 6 months until these things kind of get figured out. A lot of them are trying to make plans of, taking care of their families, making contingency plans.
They're all coming together and creating clubs, creating events, having these workshops, and just getting the word out that they're not alone.
President Trump has reportedly said he'll further delay ending DACA until Congress agrees on a plan to replace it. It's set to end in March. Another legal setback for President Trump's travel ban just hours before it was supposed to take effect. U.S. District Judge Derek Watson granted Hawaii's request to temporarily block the federal government from enforcing the policy. He found Trump's executive order suffers from precisely the same maladies as its predecessor. The White House says the Hawaii decision undercuts the president's efforts to keep the American people safe. The Justice Department says it will appeal. A campaign to end the culture of silence in the face of sexual harassment is going viral online and at the state capitol. Nearly 150 women signed an open letter to encourage others to share their stories. The signers include lawmakers, lobbyists, legislative staff members, and state government employees. The letter calls for men and women to speak up. The group created a website called We Said Enough for others to tell their stories. The letter adds to a growing chorus of women posting about harassment and unwanted advances from men. This follows allegations against Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. State water officials are bracing for what they're calling a gigantic wave of cannabis farming next year. Today, they voted to adopt a set of new regulations aimed at keeping marijuana grow sediments out of groundwater and animal habitats. New policies will address how water and fertilizer is stored and how cropland is managed by growers.
You have a lot of people who want to move into what will now be a more legitimate business, and they want to follow the rules, be good neighbors, and be seen as part of the commercial agricultural infrastructure of the state of California. It's a whole new world for them, and an opportunity for some to create a new business, and for others to come out of the shadows.
Some growers with small-scale or indoor operations will be exempt from the new regulations. Fire crews continue making progress in Northern California as new fires break out in other parts of the state. 5 firefighters were injured in Santa Cruz after a fire erupted there last night. And today in Los Angeles County, firefighters raced to protect the Mount Wilson Observatory. The wildfires still burning in Northern California after a week are the deadliest in California history. At least 41 people have been killed and 6,000 homes destroyed. Lawmakers are warning fire victims about scam artist. Congressman John Garamendi, who is the former insurance commissioner of California, says people who have lost their homes or need to rebuild should watch out for contractors claiming they can get the job done quickly and cheaply.
There'll be contractors coming along that are simply quick buck contractors. Give me $1,000 down and I'll be here tomorrow to clean up or to replace, to help you get you back on your feet. Don't go for it. Take your time. Your home isn't going to get rebuilt tomorrow, and the cleanup's going to take a while. Make sure that that contractor knows what that they're doing and that they have a license and insurance.
Congressman Garamendi says the rebuilding process could happen faster if residents work together to clean up communities and have insurance companies offer reimbursements later. On October 21st, 2007, firefighter Brooke Linman and her crew were called out to battle a wildfire that had just started in South San Diego County. Linman was severely burned in the fire that soon spread over 140 square miles. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg takes us through Linman's painful recovery from her injuries in the Harris fire.
Say cheese.
Firefighter Brooke Linman was lucky to survive the Harris fire. She was badly burned when the fire engine she was in was overrun by flames.
And then hit us from right here. I was burned from ear to ear, across my face, the worst of it being the right side of my face and the right side of my back from where the windows blew.
Linman was in such intense heat for so long that she also suffered burns to her lungs. When she arrived at the burn unit at UC San Diego Medical Center in Hillcrest, her airways started to close.
So this is our burn ICU. We can house 8 patients.
Dr. Jean Lee was on duty that day. She says Linman was heavily sedated and put on a ventilator. Lee says people who suffer deep inhalation burns have to get their lungs suctioned out.
These patients are sedated so heavily that they don't really cough very well. So we sometimes have to help them by suctioning out any secretions that develop, because if you don't, those things can, if they get caught in the lungs, they can turn into pneumonia.
Linman also had to undergo daily scrubbings of her skin burns to prevent them from becoming infected.
We do it about once a day, sometimes twice a day, depending on how bad it is, but it's at least once a day. And one dressing change for somebody who has a significant burn can take 2 to 3 hours.
Linman was released after 3 weeks in the hospital.
Oh, there's me.
What she didn't realize is that her recovery was just beginning. Linman had to undergo a number of skin grafts and other surgeries, but that was nothing compared to the emotional and mental trauma. Linman didn't feel like the same person anymore.
I wanted to get back to my career, and I couldn't do that, so that was taken from me. I lost my career to the fire, and I didn't know who I was if I wasn't a firefighter. My grandfather, he brought me a McDonald's application.
She also didn't know that she was suffering from PTSD.
If you don't know anything about PTSD, you don't attribute it to that, and you're wondering why you're angry, and you're wondering why you're yelling at the people you love the most, and why you're shutting people out.
Linman discovered a bitter truth. As a burn survivor, she wasn't the only one who was hurt. Her family was too. The Burn Institute really helped Linman turn things around. The nonprofit group offers a host of services, including financial and emotional support for burn survivors and their families.
And that's what a burn survivor needs, is support. Once you get past the hospital and the physical and you try and get back to life, that support system of people who know exactly what you're going through and what you're going to need, anticipating what you're going to need before you even know you need it. So this is one of the fundraisers they did, I guess.
Linman has also gotten involved with the Phoenix Society.
Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors
helps us get back to living.
A national nonprofit peer support group for burn survivors.
I think I'm telling them the story or something.
What's more, she's become friends with a number of other firefighters who suffered burn injuries.
And we've all kind of taken this journey together, how to get back to life.
For Linman, getting back to life has meant getting her bachelor's and master's degrees from San Diego State. And she's found her new calling.
They did a whole thank you to the firefighters.
She wants to work as a counselor for first responders who've been burned on the job. Ideally, Linman would like to work with her comrades at Cal Fire.
This is December, so yeah, 2 months later.
Linman nearly died on that October Sunday 10 years ago. And today, she looks back with a fresh perspective.
That day took so much from me, but what I didn't realize for many years later was that day gave me so many blessings. It changed the direction of my life to a place where I think I was always supposed to be.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Robin Kaufmann is a community leader in Rancho Bernardo. She says being prepared is key when living with wildfires. She was also the Rancho Bernardo Community Council president and member of the Community Emergency Response Team when the Witch Creek fire burned 365 homes in her community.
I wasn't as concerned as a lot of others because to me it was all material things. I was safe. I had my grab-and-go bags. I had my dogs. I had what I needed, and the rest of my family throughout Rancho Bernardo also was able to evacuate because I was able to give them enough of a head start notice. So we were all safe. We caravanned out of the community way before everybody else started to and got backed up in traffic, and it helped a lot. I was more prepared than most because I was a member of CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, way before the fire started. And so I learned how to be prepared and everything along those lines. But yeah, this is San Diego, especially North County Inland, does have fires. Over the years we had, before the main fire, we had 3 that came pretty close to homes, but never, they were put out before that. So this was the big fire for Rancho Bernardo. My personal goal is to educate as many people as possible to be prepared. Even those who have been through the fires, if I go up to them and say, do you have at least a half a tank of gas? Do you have your grab-and-go bag? Do you have multiple grab-and-go bags? And they look at me and say no. And it saddens me to think that so many people are not prepared in the event something happens again.
Animal lovers had a mission to protect lives during the 2007 wildfires. Claremont resident Andrea McKee made plans to get her horse out of danger.
Claremont was in no danger during the fires, so I just left everything and came out here with the truck, and I wore my sheriff's shirt so that nobody would stop me. And because everybody remembered in the 2004 fires, they had stopped people from going in and getting their horses. And some horses had died because of that. And so nobody was going to let that happen on 2007. So, of course, unlike some people, I have plans for everything. Yeah. I plan for earthquakes, I plan for fires, I plan for getting you out, what I'm going to have to do. A lot of the people who had trailers took them across the street because at the time, SDG&E had basically denuded the entire San Diego River Valley of anything that was not native species. Well, actually, they took everything. They just bulldozed it. We had some people who took their horses over there with the trailers and tied them up out there where there was nothing that could get burned. People from the east of us, they filled up Del Mar, and then they filled up the Polo Club, and they filled up Show Park, and they started not having any more. They were pulling horses, trailers into the Polo Clubs, and they just turned on the big water cannons. Nobody here is at all unaware of what could happen if there is a fire. And we all want to make sure that if there is a fire, we have escape routes. I plan obsessively. Ever since then, I have not only planned for me, I have planned for everybody else. And we have the barn knows about the evacuation plan, and every year we pester them until they clear the trail so that it won't be dangerous, just in case we have to get out. Nobody here is at all unaware of what could happen if there is a fire.
We're bracing for high surf along the coast. Erin Calandra has more in tonight's forecast.
Well, it's not the best conditions here for the beach. All along the coast here in San Diego County, we are seeing very large waves, 3 to 6 feet, and even some very dangerous rip currents. So you're not encouraged to jump in the ocean here today. This actually is in place through Wednesday evening. So very tricky and very dangerous conditions at the beach. But the rest of the county is looking pretty nice. Just a couple of clouds passing through, but we don't see any precipitation. We do have a cold front that's going to be moving in from the north. That's going to bring some rain to northern California by the end of the week, which is great news for all those wildfires that are burning. Tonight here in San Diego, 67 degrees, partly cloudy conditions along the coast and Oceanside, 54 for the low. Poway, 62 in Ramona, 55, Alpine, 58 in Borrego Springs, 68 degrees. We will see some clouds building throughout the night and then burning off throughout the day. We're under the influence of a high pressure system, so that's keeping everyone dry and also pretty warm, above average temperatures again. Very pleasant, though, across the region. It will be cooling down eventually as the week progresses. So for our highs tomorrow, Oceanside 79 degrees, Poway reaching 90 degrees, San Diego 78, Alpine 87, Ramona 89, Borrego Springs flirting with 100 degrees, and Mount Laguna 73 degrees. Everyone is pretty sunny, pretty nice conditions out there. So Wednesday, Thursday, right around 79 degrees, dropping throughout the week to Friday at 74. Mostly cloudy conditions along the coast. Saturday, it's going to be sunny and nice with a high of 77. By Sunday, we're back in the 80s. Inland, we start off at 90 degrees Wednesday, drop down to 81 by Thursday, and by Friday, we're in the 70s, jumping right back up to the 80s, though, for the weekend. In the mountains, in the 70s, down to the 60s, and in the deserts, it's hot in the 90s and 80s. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
One nation. Here we are at the city, right from the house. Game number 788.
That's Tom Abels, the San Diego State Aztecs' #1 football fan, just 3 days ago attending his 788th game. Abels died on Monday at the age of 91. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.